Lake Middleton, the first one on from up in Scout Country today, the land of, why I wonder he's reduced it by one to 9,999 lakes.
The other 900.
The other, oh, I see, the other. So he's on one lake and he's counting the other 9.
Right.
In Minnesota. Welcome, Blake, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us for this show number 745. The magnificent Finn Gold Cup is underway in Aarhus in Denmark. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to talk about the electrifying events, the high voltage racing in Barcelona today. What a venue. More weather delays. Looks like tomorrow might be a washout. We'll see. There is more of the same weather predicted tomorrow. We'll know at 0900 CET tomorrow morning whether they're going to race or not. Meanwhile, Ian Murray's revised the schedule. Hello to you, Thierry de Jong, checking in from, he's in Barcelona, actually. Rick Banner, nice to see Julia back in her seat. She is
nice
indeed.
To be back.
As we get this one, show 745 across the proverbial starting line. Welcome. Peter Taylor in New York City, John Emmett in his evening in the UK. Welcome to you, John. And many others joining us again for the second show of the day. There is Gordon Smith, also saying hi. He is in Denmark, in Copenhagen. Gordon, nice to see you on here. And all the others. For our second show today, we did the watch party this morning at 0500 San Francisco time. And that's been a lot of fun. Thanks to all of you who have contributed. We have a special treat for you because standing by at his home in London is Andrew McIrvin, Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin, the Secretary General of the IMA. He is standing by and will be joining us to give us a preview of the Maxi World, the Rolex Maxi World Cup going on starting soon. And he'll tell us all about that starting soon in, I guess, in Porto Cervo. Ed Worley saying hi, welcome everybody. Alistair Murray, Mr. President in Sydney or in Melbourne where it's 0600 in the morning. Stingray's still up in Seattle. Sleepless in Seattle, aren't you, Stingray? J. Frederick Bland, I'd sail and have sailed off the course if a lightning bolt hit anywhere near my boat. Indeed, I think we all would have. That. We're going to show you some frightening pictures and video as Ted Ryman checks in from Cape Town. John Emmett wants to get Lily on a Maxi, Mr. Secretary General. We may be able to arrange that. I'll bet you Andrew could probably arrange that. Let's get into it. Those of you here in the States, we want to wish you all a very belated, happy Labor Day. That was yesterday, our end of the summer 3-day weekend. And barbecues, family barbecues, and so on. It's usually a lot of fun. It's the traditional thing at yacht clubs and beyond. And we even had one here at the Beach Street Yacht Club yesterday, didn't we, Julia?
We did.
Huh?
Yes.
And I made gentle fun of Julia because she came down here from the Commodore's suite in her, she told me, that's not purple. What color is that?
It's lavender.
It's the lavender dress, but we put her, Alan Long will be proud of us, we put his Mentor Harbor Yacht Club hat on because it had a bit of red, white, and blue in it,
right,
Julia.
Right.
So that's Labor Day here in the States and the end, as I said, of our summer. Yesterday, a Labor Day barbecue, even here at the Beach Street Yacht Club in the grill room. Mm-hmm. The Louis Vuitton Cup, the LBC watch parties, which have been going on every race day now so far with the preliminary regatta, and now that we're into the rounds robin. We've been doing this now regularly. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks to all of you for your contributions, whether coming on the Zoom or otherwise. 1400 CET, 1200 UTC, 0500
yes.
Pacific Coast time, and it's a live stream, but a watch party, meaning bring your own video. We're not doing we show some things in the background, as those of you who've been watching know, it shows up here on the one of the two big screens here, the displays in Studio B. but we're really talking to it and enjoying all of the contributions from all of you, whether by text or by Zoom. And by the way, the Zoom is open today. We thought we'd open it for this show, and Andrew McIrvin, just an hour or so ago, kindly agreed to come on and preview for us the Maxi Regatta that's going on, his World Championship sponsored by Rolex, and we'll get to that in a moment. Well, let's bring Andrew in now because he's really going to co-host with us on this show. Andrew, welcome to yet another appearance for you, one of our Super Fozy. Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Likewise, good to see you. You have been on these watch parties at Dark 30 our time. I guess it's around your early afternoon. Have you enjoyed it?
Terribly civilized for us, unlike last time when it was in Auckland when we were all up in the middle of the night. Now you're getting that flavor. But yeah, no, it's very relaxed for us. It's very easy.
What do you think? What do you think of your Brits?
Well, I think they've had a few lucky breaks. Also, I think they've won a couple that they might not have, but they're doing okay. I still think, as I've thought from quite early on, that the Kiwis will probably hold on to it, and that the Italians will be the challenger. But it could change. I mean, today was interesting. So
well, I will get to it. I think you are. I hope you're not correct, but I think that's the sentiment. Probably most people who are keen observers, such as yourself, who've been watching this. And Stingray's commenting on your hair. It's taken an inch off your height. Stingray is saying, Andrew.
I didn't cut last week.
The AC is exactly the same time as I'm on the water. Yeah, John Emmett managed to get a report, an interesting report from out on the water. Alistair Murray, yeah, it's been a marathon, but it's been so much fun. I was saying to Julia here, Andrew, in the pre-show, how much fun it is because of the Fozy, because of the contributions from everybody. And yeah, while Labor Day is the traditional end of our kind of summer and the kids are now back in school and the clubs start to wrap up and people start thinking about taking their boats out of the water, at least in the north and the northeast, David James is saying, in a sense, at least here in SF, yesterday was the beginning, not the end of the summer, Julia, because it's so bloody hot.
Yes, no.
100 degrees Fahrenheit inland.
Yes. And that's not unusual. This is our fall, and we have sunshine. And
is it still politically correct to call this Indian summer weather?
You may call it anything you wish.
Thank you, Andrew. Mr. Doctor. Hey, if you want to join us via Zoom, I'm going to pin Andrew up here for a bit so we can get the preview from him of the Maxi Worlds coming up. Andrew is bang on the money. Graham Sweeney agrees with you about what you seem to think about the going forward in the America's Cup, and so agrees Alan Long. Seems to be the consensus. J. Frederick Bland thinks that NYAM, New York American Magic, is going to be the dark horse, we hope. If you do want to join and comment through this show, I'll see you on one of the screens and then I'll invite you on. So don't just jump in and butt into the convo, especially when we got Andrew on. But it's 267-220-6570 is the meeting ID. 267-220-6570, 1851. And it's been a lot of fun having everybody on by Zoom and chipping in with comments
and good information
and lots of good info. I think that's why so many people are, this morning, for example, maybe you saw this, Andrew, we were in a delay for whatever reason and sitting here gas bagging. And I said, oh, yeah, I remember how windy and rough it was back in February of '95, and Ralphie Steitz got hoisted up the mast. We were talking about Australia 1 sinking, and there was Ralphie Steitz watching. And you saw that. He came on and said, no, I didn't get knocked out, but I got bumped around up there. Yeah. And then he remembered that it was Greg Prussia. I couldn't remember who it was that went up. Also, I was with the team. I wasn't on the boat. And Clayton Embley, thank you. The host and the Fozy. The Fozy have been fabulous. It actually made the racing worth watching. And again, not only whether you are on the Zoom, but even the people who are giving us comments when we switch to the comments have been very interesting indeed.
Absolutely.
Speaking of interesting, have a look at this. If you are not watching with us this morning on the watch party. In the second race, it was scary because the Italians, Graham Sweeney wasn't happy because he picked the Kiwis, and a lot of us thought maybe the Italians would get their act together and finally beat the Kiwis, which they had. They beat them off the starting line, and had a roundabout 250 to 500 meter lead through most of the race. And as they were coming down the last leg into the finish, this lightning storm took over the race course area, and this very frightening lightning bolt struck. This is a replay now, a screen grab from the replay of the TV. And we had Sean and Chris Otorowski in the marina on their yacht and said, man, we got a lightning storm here and there's thunder. Maybe you can hear it. And it was scary.
It was.
Mark Michelson, our weather guru here for Sailing Illustrated, was giving us some info, as was Lance Burke, who shared his screen with some lightning strike data from a website I'd never heard of. And here is the video of the kind of the afterplay video from the America's Cup events, the organizers, and America's Cup TV, and have a look at this race.
Just above both Houston.
I think you're going to Ross are fighting for that right-hand side.
Quite a dynamic day today with a few thunderstorms around, and our race kept getting postponed with a continual right shift, and they eventually put a course in and got us going. But the wind just kept building and going right, which meant the pre-start was quite intense. It was really windy, and both boats really wanted to get start at the windward end because it was going to keep shifting right. And we thought we'd actually boxed them out in the start, but they were very punchy, the Italians, and they rolled us just before the line. And when we went to switch to turn up, we sort of lost control of the boat and ended up tacking and ended up off the foil. So from there, it was a big effort from everyone on the crew to try and get back into the race. And you know, by lap 2, we were just starting to get in a little bit closer, but then the wind kept shifting right, and we just sort of never got into a place to get enough leverage to get back into it. And at the very end, there was a big lightning bolt that came down, and we decided to try and look after the asset and look for some super yachts to hang out near. So we retired from the race, got the sails down, and we still got the boat in good shape for later in the week.
Yeah, so it doesn't count. Julie, I'm going to turn your mic down while Julie just had a bit of a cough. You're okay? You feeling good?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that was a scary moment, and
it was.
You look at this next photo. It was a scary moment, and where's that audio coming from? We're getting audio back from someone, maybe from Graham, but or from Andrew. But look at this. Awful. As that's a bit enhanced, but that's the actual lightning bolt that, again, it's off of a video. It's a screen grab. But it was an amazing moment. And now I'm going to show you a video. I think it's a camera on the back end of the boat, the back end of the Kiwi boat. And have a look at this. You'll see a lightning strike just off to the right of the sails.
Big gust here. Oh, shit.
Okay, that was obviously one of those scary moments. As Stingray said, when that happened, he said the racing got shorted out today. Because what happened, of course, is that this thunderstorm came through, and it's not like they didn't see it on the radar, because Claire Harrington sent me an hour before we went to air at, about 4:15 my time. She sent, hey, the weather's pretty awful here, and we got rain and we got overcast, and it's a kind of between a Scotch mist and threatening to rain, and that you could see on the radar image that she sent of the weather. It was weather radar, and you could see this red and yellow, the awful stuff. This is, in fact, from Claire, after the racing today. This is later on, and you can see that system was moving left to right through Barcelona. And why did they let the race go on? We had quite a natter about it on the show this morning. So the video where you hear 3 not 1. I don't know what any event. It was a scary moment. And they called racing off, wisely so. And that race didn't matter because the Kiwis don't count in the overall standings for the Louis Vuitton Cup, which are as follows, at least the results today, and then we'll get to the standings. Alinghi won that first race. They were awarded that race. They were in the lead. They had apparently disqualified. Sorry, that's the first race. Alinghi won that race over the French Orient Express. We'll come back to that in a minute. But you can see Luna Rossa beat the Kiwis in that second race, and apparently they had just disqualified, that is the umpires, ETNZ for going outside the boundaries by more than whatever the 100-meter, I think it is, minimum.
But they planned to do that.
Well, I think that's right. I think that you're right. They went on the outside the boundary on purpose.
Yeah.
Andrew's got a glass of wine. Boy, does that look good.
Oh, I like the glass too.
And Ed Worley is saying, yeah, the LBC race committee is nervous about running out of days to have racing. Well, we're going to update you on all of that because they've actually updated the schedule as of this morning. So that's the results from today. LRPP were awarded a win, but that doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. However, what did matter was that Alinghi finally won a race, beating the French, beating Orient Express Racing. They are now on the bottom, tied on the bottom of the leaderboard, and we'll see who. And that, by the way, that match today was their first match in round robin 2, so they're done racing each other, and they're tied. And if they have the equal records now going forward, there is a tie break, and they have now split. So they've each won a race, I believe. And if this continues and they each have equal records, win-loss record going forward against the other teams, there will be a race-off to determine which of those two teams would drop out, unless they both win all their matches, and then maybe the Brits or the Americans or the Italians, who knows, might not go forward. But it looks like one of those two teams are the likely loser here in this round robin phase. Alex Hayworth, the tie break is a sail off. Yes, indeed. Cloud cover will increase. Mark Michelson, our SI weather guru, will increase right before sunrise on Wednesday. Okay, back to the standings now for a moment. This is the overall standings. Again, with ETNZ in the, it's bragging rights. They're in the loop. So ETNZ on 4 wins, the Luna Rossa on 5 wins and 1 loss, 4-2 for the Kiwis. The Brits on 4-1. They've sailed 1 less race because they didn't race today. American Magic on 2-3, 2 wins, 3 losses. Again, counting their loss yesterday to the Kiwis. Alinghi Red Bull Racing and Orient Express, as we said, are on 1 and 5, tied at the bottom of that leaderboard. But here is the important leaderboard. It's just the challengers, and it does not include the scores from the racing against Emirates Team New Zealand. LRPP clearly on top, and as you heard Andrew McIrvin say a minute ago, clearly looking like the best of the challengers so far. The Brits on 3-1, New York American Magic on 2-2, and then 1-4, the 2 teams down there at the bottom. Here is a forecast for tomorrow that we got just before we went to air from Lance Burke here in the Bay Area, as a fellow St. Francis Yacht Club member. And if you look at that, you can see, and this is good because you really do need to look at the trend, 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, this is Wednesday, tomorrow, 10, 11, 12, and you can see it's 8 gusting 10 out of the northwest. 1 p.m., 2 p.m., still out of the northwest, 7 gusting 11. And you see all this rain down here. So it's going to be rainy and cloudy. And I don't know if that means thunderstormy or not. I don't think so. I think that just means rain through the afternoon until 3 p.m. And then at 4, at 1600, again, still out of the northwest, looks like frontal passage. And that's 7 gusting 10, 5, 7 gusting 10. For Barcelona tomorrow. Now, as I said, we'll know. Thanks, Lance Burke, for that slide. We appreciate your sending that along. This is the schedule that has been posted, has been published for tomorrow. As you would expect, they're just continuing on for what should have been the racing today. The Americans against the Brits, and then the Italians against the French, then the Swiss against the USA, and then the Brits against the Kiwis. And the decision to race tomorrow will be confirmed around 0900 CET, Barcelona time, Central European time, tomorrow morning. Due to forecasted thunderstorms, the decision could be that all racing will be moved to the next day, to the 5th. In fact, they published tonight, it's evening over there now in Barcelona, they published this amendment to the sailing instructions and to the schedule. And you see that there is the aforementioned schedule for tomorrow, the 4th of September. But if they lose these 4 races and everything gets pushed back to the 5th, then they've already booted one of what we were to have reserve days on both the 6th and I believe the 7th. And they've canned the 7th as a reserve day and have scheduled racing. So we've got Friday off right now as a reserve day, maybe, if they don't lose any of these races here in the next 2 days. Then racing over the weekend, which is good for spectators, good for TV, on the 7th and 8th, and then 3 more reserve days, 9, 10, and 11. So the weather's supposed to continue to be crappy through at least these 3 days, improving on the weekend. So who knows?
Yep.
I do think, though, there's enough days, Andrew, Julia, I think there's enough days, reserve days in the schedule. Ian Murray's a very clever fellow, and I think they'll get all this racing off. What saith you, Julia?
No, I think so too. Enough to go through all.
To get the second round
Yeah,
robin completed.
right.
Andrew, what are you thinking? Sorry, I muted. Somebody came on. I think I muted you, Andrew. So now you got to unmute yourself again. I apologize. Can you unmute yourself, Andrew? Your mute button. Yeah, you're muted. Your little red mute. I need a switch that unmutes all. You're still muted. Can you find your mute button? We normally do this. This is one of the reasons why we do.
Okay, I'm okay.
There we
I'll
go.
find it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is Ian Murray going to
Well,
get
I
all
think-
these races in?
I think he probably will, but I mean, the nightmare of holding any racing in the Mediterranean, which we do quite a lot, is you either have too much wind or no wind. And I would almost guarantee that any regatta in Saint-Tropez or in Porto-Cervo, we would lose at least a day from either one extreme or the other. And of course, presumably they aren't going to race these boats in more than 25 knots. I think it's maybe a little bit more, but certainly the problem is when they get down to the falling off the foils, when the thing becomes a bit of a farce. And I think that's the worst for them. I think what they're predicting, 8 to 10 knots, is ideal. That's really what they're set up for. So if they get that, they'll be fine.
Yeah,
But,
I got to go back and find my little note about wind limits here. I think it's even less than 25 knots. I think it's 24, isn't it? 6.5 to 24 knots. One of the Fozy will know. I believe that is the wind range within which they will race. And we'll see in a moment. 22 knots. Thank you, Baton Rouge, Baton Cannon down in Charleston, over in Charleston, South Carolina. 22 knots. So it's even a little less than that. Now, Stingray's 6.5 to 21 is okay, guys. Is it 21 or 22? And maybe it's 21 during the LVC, and then it goes up a knot. That has happened in the past as well. So 6.5 to 21. Our statistician, very smart guy, Mark Holland, is saying, and of course, that's the 5-minute boxcar average of those wind speeds within which they will race. So that amended schedule. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, it only going up to 21 is really quite limiting, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But I think, in fact, what happens if it starts to blow at 21 there, it's very rapidly blowing a lot more than that because it's Mistral type conditions, and you always get a lot more. So I think that it's what it's gusting that's the problem.
Well, and that could be the problem over the weekend. They could have too much wind on the weekend. So I think I agree. I think they'll get this in, but as Terry Hutchinson said famously 2 years ago, he said, the problem with the Med as a venue is that there's either too much wind or not enough. And he's proving correct on that. As they have amended the sailing instructions, they are going to try to get all this racing in. They've got plenty of reserve days on the end. and hopefully that'll happen. Thank you, Vice Commodore Claire Harrington, for sending that amendment along right away. Between you and Stingray, who's watching the notice boards for me, we generally know what's going on. And Mark Michelson, our SI weather guru, is saying if you believe the models, and he's looking at all of them, the European model, the UK model, the US model, there isn't too much wind for the next 7 days. Okay, well, we'll see about that. One more note here, just on the schedule. I've gotten so many questions about the schedule. So we've run this slide before, and I just want to clarify that we're in this double round robin phase. Here it is. We're in the double round robin phase. All 6 teams are racing, but again, only the 5 challengers count, and the results as between them, only those 5 count. And that racing started on the 29th of August, the rounds robin phase. And we're now at the end of round robin 1. We're into round robin 2 with each of the teams racing each of the others twice in this double round robin. The semis will start the week after this coming week. The 14th of September is the start of the semifinals, when the top 4 teams, one drops out, top 4 teams into first to score 5 points, 2 semifinals. First place coming out of the rounds robin get to choose which of the other 3 teams they will race in their semi. So you would like to be first. You'd like to have the ability to choose your opponent in the semis, and sometimes you can play some head games, some mind games, and that can be interesting and fun. And usually you pick the 4th place team, but not always, especially if you've just whomped one of the teams in recent racing. Then the finals of the LVC are on the 26th, start the 26th of September. And that's first to score 7 points between the 2 winners of the semifinals, aka the finalists, and then the winners of that, the winner of that will go race the Kiwis in the America's Cup match, which starts the 12th of October and runs through the latest it would run, also first to win 7, 12th through the 21st of October. And as Andrew knows, and all the rest of you knows, in this period now, the wind doesn't ramp up, it ramps down. And I can attest to that, having lived down the shore in Valencia for almost 10 years. We know how the weather, it's fine, it's beautiful weather, but there's not much wind September, October, and into November. Ed Worley in Perth, everyone would put on your gear and go sailing. These wind limits are crutonic. Well, but you gotta, the boats are gonna be beaten up if they tried to race in anything too much. And it's the boats that are the problem. It's also the venue that's the problem. Enough of all that. And then we want to get on to other news, as I said in today's cover slide.
What games do you think?
Say again?
Do you think there'll be any games if you decided you didn't want to race either Italy or France, you might let the other one win in order to break that tie and make sure they leave? And I think that's quite an interesting concept.
Yeah, and that's always a risk. And we know, in fact, in the past, we can all recount. Ed Worley can tell you, I can tell you, others that have been involved in the Cup, where teams have said, oh, we're never going to throw a race. That would be unsportsmanlike if we did that. And then they go out and they throw a race to help that team come up and maybe eliminate. But I think the teams are so, at this point, Andrew, Julia, I think the teams need all the hardcore, hard-bitten racing they can get.
Yeah.
And I'd be
I think they really want that.
and you'd let the chips
Yeah, I think it's unlikely.
otherwise
Also,
fall.
it's difficult to know which to pick of those two. Which one you should be wanting to get rid of?
You mean as
probably
between the French and the Swiss?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, who would you rather, if you'd like to see one get eliminated, one that you didn't want to race, who would it be?
I think actually, although in theory they've had the least practice and the least dollars, they've got the faster boat almost certainly, and they've just got to learn how to sail it, and they'll be getting better and better. So I think I'd be more frightened of the French.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And plus, they also, as we know, they've got the benefit of the coaching and the design program. They've got the design plan from the Kiwis And that French boat has at times looked pretty darn good. A double twerk at the start and a cloud of dust, J. Frederick Bland. And we're going to get to the double twerk comment from this gentleman today. Graham, I want to thank Graham Sweeney, Zoomer Sweeney, who's been on with us every day. Maybe he missed the first day, the very first day of the preliminary regatta, but Graham's been on with me, and I really appreciate him coming on, and others who've joined in, Gordon Smith and Christopher Gillingham, and Lance Burke today was terrific. But Gordon said after today's race, and I think he coined this expression, the double twerk. Maybe that existed, but he applied it to sailing. He said the definition of the double twerk is, Julie, get your finger ready. Flipping your hips, then tits in rhythmic succession. In sailing, a fake barroway, he spelled it B-A-R-E, a fake barroway, then a sharp roundup, leaving your opponent with positive air on the wrong side, leaving them in your proverbial dust, leaving them in your vortex, coming off the trailing edge of your sails, edges, leaving them on the wrong side of the sail, stalling the rig and dropping the opponent off the foils. The only way out, invoke the hand of God on the finishing leg, which is his metaphor for today's race, because that's exactly what the Italians did. They got ahead and slightly upwind, actually, off the starting line of the Kiwis. The Kiwis fell off their foil, and after they fell off their foils, the Italians were ahead by, as I said at the top of the show, by 300, 400, 500 meters. And okay, it settled in at more or less 250, 300 meters around the track. And they were coming down the last leg when that hand of God came in and that lightning bolt.
Just in case.
In case. So, Graham, thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. Julie, you want to give him your...
I did.
You did. I didn't have you on the air, though. No. Your camera on when that happened. But thanks to everybody else who came on, because we had a lot of fun. And it was quite an interesting group today, because Chris Otorowski, Lance Burke, and Graham, of course, we're on from, we got the world covered. We got San Francisco, we got Scotland, and Barcelona covered here from those three. And Chris Otorowski, whose wife is Sean, Chris is known as Otto. She was on as well. And there they are on their yacht, which is tied up in Port Vell. Yesterday, they were out on one of the big New York Yacht Club boats for the senior series supporters of the syndicate. And Chris and Sean, thank you very much for coming on and helping us out with information right from the harbor.
Yeah, from the water.
After the show, I heard from this gentleman, Alan Megarry from Canada, is the former co-chair of the Canada's Cup and has been a FOSI. He's been on the show any number of times, lives out in Western Canada when he's not in and around Toronto at the Royal Canadian Yacht Club. He was aboard Radiant in Barcelona today. And that, of course, is John Heal's boat. John Heal, who owns that magnificent, I guess it's called, what's the name of that? Radiant. The magnificent Radiant. He's a senior series New York Yacht Club supporter. There in the foreground, Alan, with John there in the background. Nice to have them on as well, supporting New York Yacht Club. So that gets us through the America's Cup. We will do a bit of an America's Cup update here in a few minutes, but we've got more interesting things, especially since we were able to get Andrew on the show today, standing patiently by in London. Graham Sweeney, you've just made his day, Julia, by giving him that finger wag.
I know.
Jody Shields asking, I wonder what the weather's like in New Zealand. Yeah, too bad this is not in Auckland, but of course, Jody, as you know, it would have been in January, February, probably not this time of year had this event taken place in Auckland, where it should be, where it should have been. Julia,
Sir.
What are we celebrating today?
Hard to tell.
Well, we'll see if Mr. Andrew McIrvin knows. Andrew, do you know this gentleman? Are you muted again?
Yeah.
I think you're muted again, Andrew.
I've muted myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it right, though. You just didn't hear it. You have to see my lips move.
Well, I've got the lower third on there. Oliver
Protector.
Cromwell. who lived from 1599 to 1658. Yeah, Ted Ryman's got that. We're celebrating him today because in the UK, Andrew, it is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand it is Oliver Cromwell Day.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He's not entirely celebrated to the extent that we dug him up and hanged him after he was after he died. They weren't very keen on, so we got our revolution in early, and then brought our royalty back, and we've hung on to them ever since.
And I don't think he was too popular with the Irish, and as Yarvahe is saying, nor the Scots, from what I read.
No, he made an appalling mess of Ireland. I mean, he went around smashing up all the churches. No, he was. I certainly was more of a cavalier than a roundhead, as you would.
Well, he lived back in the early 1600s, and I don't need to read all. He's an English statesman, politician, and soldier, widely regarded as one of the most important figures in British history, having, I guess, unified by hook or by crook, unified the British Isles. He came to prominence during the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, initially as a senior commander in the Parliamentarian Army and latterly as a politician, yada, yada. But apparently that day is celebrated. I know some of his statues, particularly the one up in Edinburgh, has been seriously defaced. I saw some pictures here. Yarvahe is saying the man was a butcher. Clark Chapin confirming his understanding that he smashed all the churches. Some he merely seized from the Church of England. Well, so he's obviously a bit of a difficult figure, but this statue of him was erected outside, and it's been there since 1899, outside the UK House of Commons. And there is a
Westminster Hall.
Westminster Hall, is that where it is?
Yeah.
Okay, you better get on and correct Wikipedia, Andrew, because it says on Wikipedia the House of Commons.
Well, the Westminster Hall is attached to the Houses of Parliament. It's the only traditional. It's very old building with an amazing hammer beam roof, and that's been there a lot longer than the Houses of Parliament, which were built really much later in the Victorian period.
Graham Sweeney is saying it's a long time to hold a grudge. In any event, this guy is celebrated on this day in the UK, and there's some kind of a Cromwell association. Not very many people show up. I noticed that. The statue that they say stands outside the Palace of Westminster, and that is what is being celebrated today, as well as those of you who are FOSI, especially those of you who are patrons and have joined via patreon.com. Patreon/join/Sailing Illustrated. We are deeply indebted to all of you because it helps keep this Studio B ticking along. That's how we buy the equipment, with your contributions through Patreon. And those of you who are patrons and give us a few bucks per month, thank you very much indeed. Andrew, let's get to your favorite topic, because I know you may have to get off the air with us. Thank you for coming on. But we do have coming up here your Rolex Maxi Yacht Rolex Cup coming up. Tell us about the event before I play the video.
Sure. Well, it's certainly our premier event, and it was started as a joint venture originally between the Maxi Association and the Yacht Club Costa Smeralda. And Rolex came on board 30 odd years ago and have sponsored it ever since. It's colloquially known as the Maxi Worlds. ISAF, or as it was then, World Sailing, came along and said, you can't call it a Worlds because you aren't an international class and you haven't bought flags for every boat and all the rest of it. So we went into some considerable negotiation with them, and originally we are now allowed to hold 2 Worlds for Maxi classes, which is quite difficult because we've got a very disparate group. We've got 45 boats, and they vary from a boat that's got a rating, Swan 65, that's got a rating sort of 1.0 something, to boats that are up at 1.900. So it's a vast spread, and we split them up into 4 or 5 classes usually, according to rating rather than length. But we're lucky this year. We've got 11 boats in the top range of the ratings. So in IRC, that's 1.700 and above. In length, they vary from 80 up to 100. And those boats, we're going to put them in a group and they're called Maxi One. And they will have a world championship within the overall competition.
How many boats total do you have in Porto Cervo?
45.
Beautiful, fantastic.
It's probably 3 less than last year, but I think the quality at the top end of the fleet is actually considerably stronger. So we're pretty pleased with what we've got.
Do you have the worst job
in Saint-Tropez? So we've got even more in Saint-Tropez, but there are a lot more boats in Saint-Tropez that aren't really racing that seriously. They're there for the celebration and the parties, whereas this event is a lot more serious from the racing point of view.
Andrew, do you
We've
have
got a couple missing? We've got a couple sadly missing who have opted. So Hap Fouth and Jim Schwartz have opted to take their Maxi 72 to a competition in Newport, where they thought they'd get more Maxis, but they've only got 3. So we miss them.
That's the so-called IRC World Championship? ORC World Championship?
Yeah, except they're not having a world championship because we've let them have a Maxi North Americans.
Hey, I want to ask you, though, you are the Secretary General for how many years now of the IMA, the International Maxi Association?
This is my 11th, believe it or not.
11th year.
Oh, gosh.
And
when I took over, this was the only event. We really didn't have anything else.
The event in Porto Cervo.
Grown and grown. Yeah.
So
we've grown and grown.
Andrew, is this the best job in the sport, or is it the worst job in the sport, or somewhere in between? How do you herd these cats? How do you have these billionaire egos?
Well, I always say that I spent quite a long time running a department of surgery and surgeons aren't renowned for their shy and retiring egos. So I'm quite used to dealing with difficult people.
Great answer.
You're right. These guys can be very tricky, mainly because you often can't talk to them directly. It's their captains who write the furious emails, and they're fighting for every inch of the way.
Because they're fighting for their jobs. The captains are in some cases,
yes.
Yeah.
And they'll push everything. And of course, the other thing is these guys aren't used to anybody saying no, because they're all multimillionaires, and they're used to being surrounded with people who say yes, sir, not people like me saying no, you can't be in that class. So it can be quite tricky at times.
Mm.
It's usually good, but sometimes it's exasperating because there are times you can't please everybody, and this is. At the moment, we've got an unhappy bunch where there are only 4 of them of the ex Maxi 72s who used to be a class, but they decided to split it up. So they're a bit on their own, because the only thing that unites the rest of the fleet is that they don't want to race against them, because they're the most fully optimized boats and they're very difficult to beat. So what really hacks off the guys with 100-footers is to be beaten by a 72-footer. They really can't hack that. So they've formed a splinter group and said, by hell or high water, they are not going to race with the 72s. And actually, they don't even want to race with the 85-foot with Deep Blue, with Capricorno, with My Song. And they wanted, so that then there'd be a little bunch of another 3 boats who nobody didn't want to go down to the 72s, and they actually do want to race with the 100s. So we have lots of arguments that way, and you can't please everybody, because the smaller guys want to race with the big guys and the big guys don't want them, and you can't square that circle. So it can be tricky.
Well, let's look at your video. I say yours, it's Rolex produced it, and I was surprised to see Ben Ainsley in this video. Has he done any Maxi racing lately?
Well, I was scratching my head and trying to work out how long it is since he did do he's been so busy doing America's Cup and SailGP that I can't remember seeing him in Porto Cervo for years. But anyway, he's given them nice words.
Well, let's have a look at this video and we'll come back.
The Maxi Yacht Rolex Cup, I think, is one of the most iconic races in global sailing.
The Maxi Yacht Rolex Cup is one of the undisputed highlights of the international sailing calendar. thanks in part to the 4 decades of collaboration between the Yacht Club Costa Smeralda and Rolex. Since its foundation, the regatta has been a showcase for the evolution of yacht design and attracts the world's leading sailors and racing yachts that are the pinnacle of power, speed, and elegance.
The Maxi Yacht Rolex Cup is an iconic event in our sport. I've been racing in that regatta since 1985. I personally have been lucky to live 40 years of that tradition and that ride. It's a variety of conditions that are challenging to sailors.
You can quite often get some strong winds coming down through the islands, La Maddalena Island. Also, you can get some light sea breezes, which is also quite challenging for the teams. So that mixture of conditions really makes it a standout venue.
I think all those things together make Porto Cervo and Yacht Club Costa Smeralda a very special place to race. You have owners preparing the boat, buying the best sails, getting the best designers, best crews, and everybody's there to win.
It's such a beautiful venue. The Yacht Club is second to none, I think, anywhere in the world, and a wonderful host of this event. When you get such beautiful yachts coming together for a festival of sail, the conditions in Sardinia at that time of year are just perfect for sailing these style of boats, and it's just one of the best events you can race at anywhere in the world.
Over one intense week of competition, the rewards are great and highly coveted. The 34th Maxi Yacht Rolex Cup commences September 8th in Porto Cervo, Sardinia.
It's a marvelous venue. It's a marvelous yacht club. I've sailed there, Andrew, as you know. I've been on your jury there. I don't know how many times, chaired it once or twice, I think, over the years. And it's a fabulous yacht racing venue and event. Bravo Zulu to you and the IMA. Anything else you can tell us by way of preview of this Maxi Worlds coming up? Oops, just a second.
Everything.
Go ahead.
Everything that was said there is absolutely true. It is the most fantastic place to sail, and it's one of the places that the wind is more reliable than most other parts of the Mediterranean. And sailing through the islands is great. We do have a day of windward lures for the Maxi 1 and 2 fleets as well, because they like to mix it up. They don't just want to do the trips around the islands. But the trips around the islands are fascinating because you get such different weather going through the inside of the archipelago. And then going outside. So you get a real mixture. Now, I think everybody loves it. It's the most fantastic place. The club's fantastic, and it's all incredibly well run. We've got some changes. We've got a new race officer, Principal Race Officer Stuart Childerley this time. We've got, for the second year, we've got Maxi multi-hulls. We've got big gunboats, and Allegra is even bigger. So that's an interesting mix, bringing them in, which... was a bit of an experiment, which we've certainly, it worked well last year. We were hoping to attract rather more. We've said we'd take up to 5. We haven't got there. Disappointingly, the Jays were going to come in force and prepare for a World Championships in Barcelona, and they've dropped to only 2 here and only 4 in Barcelona. So we're not going to hold the Worlds for them, because that was our other World Championship. We had donated to the Jays, and we held it in Newport a few years ago, and that was a fantastic event. So we hope they'll come back, but the herding cats thing is even worse there. So it's very difficult to get those owners to get together, and I think a couple of them got quite frightened of racing because they had a couple of very expensive collisions. So I think the thing about this is it's full-on racing. Some of the super yacht regattas, they do separated starts, and they have separate super yacht rules that they must keep 40 meters apart. We race quite big fleets together, big starts all together, full-on racing, and it's very exciting to watch. And it is, I think, a pinnacle regatta for the world.
Okay, well, anything else? Julie, do you have any questions, or any of the Fosi have any questions about this fabulous event coming up? Yarvahe has a question I see here. He's saying, how many Jays in Barcelona? We think 4 Jays in Barcelona, 2.
4, yes.
4 in Barcelona and 2, Andrew, for your event next weekend. When does that start?
The 8th. So it starts on Sunday.
Starts on Sunday. Okay, next week, this coming weekend.
It doesn't. The briefing and everything is on Sunday, and the opening cocktail. The actual racing is until Monday, and it goes through Saturday with a lay day, probably on Thursday, depending on the weather.
Okay.
Yes, it is spectacular.
Oh gosh, what a place! Andrew, can you stay on, or do you have to dash?
Yeah, I'll probably come back. I've just got a couple of things. But I'll keep watching. And I'll
well, we're really looking forward to having you here in San Francisco in a few weeks.
Too. I talked to Kimball today, actually, because he's got to write an article for the New York Times by today.
Is that he's writing for you about the Maxis?
No, he's writing. He's writing about the Maxis, but apparently the editor only asked him to do it today and wanted it by today.
Well, that's good. I mean, the last time, who wrote the article? You had a great article a year or so ago in the New York Times with one of the owners.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do one every year. Actually, they've been very good. I think Rolex give them a big nudge.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's how it happens. But yeah, it's nice to get the coverage. Considering, I mean, the press coverage. I don't know what it's like in the States, but the press coverage of the America's Cup has been non-existent in the UK. It used to be lots in our major national newspapers, virtually nothing at all.
Yeah, indeed. And as I was saying, you're going to be here in a few weeks for the Stag Cruise. Any of you who are coming to the Stag Cruise, this is going to be a real treat because Andrew is giving the first ever keynote, the opening kind of speech talk. It's going to be interactive. It's not going to be a speech like he's standing up on a stage at the convention center. But it's a Q&A thing almost, but you're going to put some ideas out. Kimball, the aforementioned Kimball Livingston, Staff Commodore Kimball Livingston, who's a great journalist and was a great Commodore here at St. Francis, is going to moderate that session for us on Friday morning. And Andrew, we're really looking forward to having you here.
Yes, indeed.
Looking forward to coming.
Is this your second or third Stag Cruise?
Third. Yes.
Oh, good.
Okay. Well, maybe we can make this an annual tradition. Okay. Well, if you have to dash off for a minute,
I'll let you talk about the fins and things, and I'll come back.
Okay. We're going to leave the Zoom on in case anyone else. I see Mark Michelson is on. Thanks, Andrew. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed.
And we'll see you in a bit. Julia, as we are going to talk now about the fins, but before we do that, I've got a Bravo Zulu I want to do because we have some other big boat racing here that has wrapped up, and that's in the 52 Super Series. The TP52s have raced in Puerto Portales, and they have crowned a winner as well, and here is their video.
So the last day of racing, complicated forecasts. Who's going to win? Who's going to be the champions here in Mallorca?
Yesterday was a tough day for us. The overall get really tight. So what we need to do is do our best race and the things will come.
We did a lot of mistakes during this regatta, but everybody did a lot of mistakes. And the group is bigger now, so more boat. Situation is a little tighter.
Really excited. The points are tight and we're sailing well. There's a great energy within our team, so really looking forward to it.
So the big finale, the big showdown race gets underway after a little bit of a delay. 225 is the wind angle. It's about 8 to 9 knots of breeze. It's quite a streaky breeze. And off the start line will Gladiator get the perfect start, get it out to the right, which is preferred on this upwind. The top mark though, Teasing Machine leading, Gladiator second, Platoon Aviation in third. Platoon Aviation have the regatta lead still. All they need to do is chase Gladiator in the same stretch of water all the way around the race course. But on the run, Platoon Aviation jibe to the left and lose out a little bit to Gladiator, and that's the finish order through the finish line. Well, it's a win for Teasing Machine, the French debutants. Gladiator in second and Platoon down in fifth. The regatta title in Puerto Portales go to Gladiator, winning 2 regattas in a row. Platoon finishing second, and Quantum Racing powered by American Magic finish third overall.
Obviously really pleased. It was quite a tough week, but we kept our nerves, and today I think that we have a solid day. We read the conditions pretty well, and obviously we pull it off, so we are very, very happy.
Before we came here, we probably would have signed a second, but going into today with 3 points lead and only one race, and there was a tough race there.
We're hoping to get the win, but Gladiator and Platoon sailed really well. Looking forward to Valencia and looking forward to ending up on a good note.
So the final standings at the Puerto Portals 52 Super Series sailing week. After 9 races, Gladiator win on 40 points. Platoon Aviation takes second on Countback on 40 points, and third Quantum Racing Powered by American Magic on 45 points. So after 4 of 5 regattas this season, Gladiator leading on 152 points. Second are Quantum Racing Powered by American Magic on 160 points. Third, Platoon Aviation on 180 points. Fourth, Sledge on 188 points. Fifth, Alegre on 198. Well, a long, hard, hot week here in Puerto Portals, Mallorca. Gladiator finishing up on top. 2 regatta wins in a row for them. We now head to Valencia for the big finale, the end of season. Can Gladiator carry on the momentum and win the 2024 title? Join us there.
You see that lady in the middle?
Yep.
You know who that is? She's with that Team Vayu. I guess she's with the winners, but she is the queen of Thailand. I think that's who that is.
Oh, really?
And she was with their team VAYU, which is the Thai team in the 52 Super Series.
Yeah.
And she was on the boat. There was another video somewhere of her, and I didn't run that because
good for her.
But yeah, exactly, and nice for Thailand. And Thai is quite a good sailing country because they've got the Optimist program, the Optimist teams. They've done well in all of that, and it's nice to see.
It is.
Royalty in our sport. Who would have thought, Julia? Besides you, of course.
Of course. No, what I was thinking again is that how good Rolex is.
Yeah, aren't we lucky? We say that every time we watch one of these Rolex videos, and we so appreciate them. Ben has been too busy, if anything. Yeah, he's been plenty busy out doing promos and videos and running his campaign and sailing on the boat. I'm not going to go into that. The IKCs, which is the canal. We had somebody on here live from out in the Bay because the Mike Gazzardo. Thanks, Mike, for signing on. Hello from the Knarr, Knarr Internationals, which are starting here on San Francisco Bay this week. Not quite as exciting as the America's Cup, but the best tactical sailing there is. And that, of course, these big, heavy, slowish boats that are popular in Denmark and Norway, and here on San Francisco Bay, where it's on the North Sea, the Baltic, where it's breezy and bumpy, North Sea particularly, and also northern Germany in Kiel.
Yes.
There's a few Knarrs, and they have this alternating World Championship or IK International Knarr Class Championship that goes between Denmark, Norway, and the U.S., and between our 2 clubs here, the main clubs on the Bay, San Francisco Yacht Club and St. Francis Yacht Club. They co-host this thing, or one or the other hosts it. But they gather boats up locally. They don't ship the boats. They gather up local boats in one of these 3 big areas.
Right.
And the sailors come in from out of town, and they sail a different boat each day. And the work that goes involved trying to equalize the boats and be sure that they're correct, it's a monumental task. And bravo Zulu to everybody involved here in the IKCs.
One of the things that we talk about, the camaraderie that comes out of sailing, this class has 3 and 4 generations
Indeed.
Of people sailing in it.
Indeed. Lots of questions and comments here. Too many for us to get involved with, but Fog Machine Lance Burke is also talking about the IKCs. So we've gone from the 52 Super. There are other things going on in the sport besides the America's Cup.
Indeed. In fact, the America's Cup isn't going on right now.
Exactly. Speaking of which, let's get to something that is near and dear to our hearts, and that's John Emmett in the Coach's Corner. John checking in with his regular report. The Coaching Corner with John Emmett, and he is in Weymouth, in fact, out on the water. He filed this just before we went to air today.
Hi Tom, Julia and all the Fozy. Welcome to John Emmett's Coaching Corner, and today is a very typical day in the office. We're outside in Weymouth Bay doing a little bit of boat speed work, 2-boat training with some Ilka 6s. One of the worst kept secrets is you can never get enough time in the boat, and it is very important when you're training to really optimize your training, so you work on one specific thing to try and make it as good as it possibly can be. Today's focus, as you might be able to guess, is downwind. So we will go downwind for maybe a nautical mile and then tow back upwind, so we absolutely maximize the amount of time we have training downwind, because normally the ratio of sailing upwind to downwind isn't very good. You can see just how much distance can be gained on a relatively short downwind, and that's why there's no such thing as too much time in the boat. Home time.
John Emmett in the coaching corner for today. Thanks, John, for that report. It was out on the water, didn't have a lot of time to edit it, as you can see, but a beautiful video nonetheless, for which we are deeply appreciative. I see Ed Worley saying that he sailed canars, and yes, the canars are originally in wood, now they're glass, and there is somebody in Germany are building glass canars, I guess, once in a blue moon. John Emmett, get to the front of the fleet. John Emmett Sailing in his regular Coaching Corner report. Thanks, John. Our feature today is another non-America's Cup story. It's a good thing we did this show, Julia.
Yes.
We didn't do last Friday, but there is a lot going on in the yacht racing world, and it's nice to be able to cover it here from Studio B, something other than 0500 talking about the Bloody America's Cup, although that has been a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll do that probably tomorrow morning again if there's racing. But the Finn Gold Cup, aka the Finn Class World Championship, by the way, the Silver Cup, which is for their under something, they're under 23, I think it is. Somebody will know the answer to that. That's going on in Aarhus in Denmark. Started the 31st, and they today had their first day of real racing. They had a practice race yesterday for the Finn Gold and Silver Cups in Aarhus in Denmark. Here is their video from yesterday. Hard to believe this class, even though it's no longer in the Olympics, still attracts 100 people. They said 110. I think their final tally was 98 that started in the racing yesterday and today on day one. And again, Robert Deves from the UK, who does their work, he also does the 5.5 meter class PR and a few others, just does a fabulous job for this class, who have, again, as you said, Julia, generations of stalwarts that come out, and the Masters is even a bigger... And Grandmasters, and exactly, and it's even a bigger regatta than their regular World Championship, than the Finn Gold Cup and the Silver Cup. Tom Fishbeck asking if St. Francis Yacht Club still does a downwind slalom race like they used to do in the Lasers. That's been on and off for years. It was on for quite a while, and in the heavy weather slalom, and then it was off, and then they brought it back a little bit, but the kids aren't so interested in doing it. Peter Taylor in New York, Fins and Stars are the bomb. Terrific. John Emmett thinks that the ILCA Master Europeans for the laser will be around 300 competitors. That's a grand class. By now, a grand old class. It's 50 years old and still in the Olympics, as it well should be. Right, John? So they race today. One of the veterans, the Hungarian gentleman, is leading, but let's look at their summary video from today. And Julia, as you said, nice music. Look at this. Same music.
It is.
Okay, this is again by way of beautiful B-roll, as the TV guys call it, but 100 boats, give or take. And it was a light day. They only got one race in today. But what a fantastic class, what a fantastic tradition. And again, the people, we love the America's Cup, I really do, because it's still the pinnacle event in our sport. But when you see that 90-something% of the world sails these kinds of boats in these kinds of conditions, you can understand why there is not the same enthusiasm about the America's Cup that there used to be when it was in 12 meters, or the IACC boats or whatever. The traditional monohull boats with crew doing real work, sails going up and down, grinding to make that happen, trimming, steering, as we've talked about ad nauseum on this show.
Making decisions on your own.
Yeah, not so much the electronic push-button racing that we're seeing. Domankos Nemeth. I knew his father, Miklos Nemeth, very well. His dad was a good friend of mine. I grew up in Michigan, where we had a fair few Hungarians in that part of in southeastern Michigan, and a number of them sailed. And Hungary have got that fabulous Balaton, Lake Balaton, up north of Budapest, or Budapest, as we affectionately know it in the Formula One world. And they had Domankos Nemeth is leading. He's been a power in the class. He won the only race today. And Laurent Hay from France, also a leader. And then Oskari Muhonen from Finland is in third. A couple Italians on down, some familiar names, those of you who follow the Finn class, including, you got to love this guy down in 10th place, Julie. You see his name?
Peter Pete.
From the Netherlands. Bravo Zulu to them. Bravo Zulu to the class. Robert D., thank you for sending me the stuff timely and getting it to us in time so we could run it for this show. And nice to have the sound back on. Patrick Keys is saying, yeah, nice Finn video. Fritz Mueller down in Miami. And a reminder, it doesn't blow all the time. Good stuff. Got to pay those royalties. Okay. Did the sound drop out there for a while? I haven't seen anything at this end. I didn't think it did, but maybe it did. Let's look at the AC37 Cup date. This is not what you think it's going to be about. We've covered that at the top of the show. But let's look at what is going on in the youth and women's America's Cups, which haven't gotten going yet, but they're about to, Julia.
Yeah, because we haven't heard anything.
Well, there's some PR being pumped out. I just haven't been too on top of it with everything else that we're covering, especially about the America's Cup. But there was an announcement that came out today on the 3rd about this group, and we're very proud. Bravo Zulu to the Australians, who are back in the Cup, at least via, they're sailors. They got a bunch of sailors like Tommy Slingsby and Jimmy Spithill and so on. But this is their esteemed women's team from Australia and their youth team from Australia, a bunch of great sailors sailing for their sponsor, and their name of their team is Andu Australia. The first ever women's AC and a youth competition will welcome back Australia as teams to the world's most prestigious sailing competition being held in Barcelona, Spain, over the coming 2 months. This week, the Australian campaign, named team skippers to lead each competition with, drum roll, our Fozy Cole Tapper.
Right.
And Cole, of course, is the current champion, the skipper who won the Governor's Cup down at Balboa Yacht Club this July, this past couple months ago. He is the skipper of the youth team. And drum roll, please, the skipper of the women's team, our Fozy Olivia Price from the Price family, Christiane Davy, and of course her brother Harry Price, all of whom have been on this show a number of times. And we are wishing Olivia, the Olympic medalist from 2012, and Cole Tapper both best wishes for success in this coming up event. They were feted. How do you like to pronounce that, Julia? Feted, like feta cheese?
Yeah, no.
Well, in any event, my mother always said, when you don't know how to pronounce a word, choose another one. My late great mother. They had a big thing on August 30th at the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, and big celebration for Olivia on the left and Cole on the right, the respective skippers of the women's and youth teams. Bravo Zulu to them and their teams. A big media PR push, including with the boxing kangaroo down there on the right.
Yep.
The uncredited or unicredit, I can't remember if that, I don't think that's spelled right on that's their graphic, not mine. Youth America's Cup team starts in Barcelona on September 17th. So that's just in 10 days, 2 weeks, I guess, from now, with Australia taking to the water on the incredible AC-40 foiling yachts in Group 2 on September 18th. The Puig, Pooch, it's pronounced in Spanish. Pooch.
How do you get Pooch out of that?
Yeah, well, it's Catalan, and that's how you get it.
Yeah.
Women's America's Cup will start on October 5th, with Australia hitting the water on October 6th in Group 2. And remember, there are 12 teams in each of these events. They didn't say that in this part. This is an excerpt from their longer release. And the 6 America's Cup teams, the 1 Defender and 5 Challengers, each have a team in this. And then there are 6 other teams from around the world that have been invited to participate as well. And it's going to be broadcast on Fox Sports in Australia and on YouTube and they'll be interweaving those events with the LVC, providing maximum exposure for this watershed moment for women in sailing.
That's terrific.
So nice pictures there by Nick Douglas. Thank you for that. And we shall see probably more of the boxing kangaroo, Julia.
Oh, yes.
Remember the boxing kangaroo?
I do.
When did we last see that in full force? There it is.
Yeah.
You
I was going to say Australia too, but
Australia too, you're absolutely right. We saw it also in the 87 Cup in Australia 3 and Australia 4, but then Australia 2 in Newport, of course. In 1983 was when we got to know that kangaroo well on the yacht of Australia 2, the winners. That really marked, I mean, if you will, Julia, that marked the start of the modern era of the Cup. Some would say the 12-meter era in 58 marked the modern era, but some would say now it's just the modern era, it's just the postmodern era.
Yeah, we're postmodern, right?
It's just starting now, but really, I think when New York Yacht Club lost after 132 years, that longest winning streak in sports apparently having been broken, most people think it is, by this yacht, by Australia 2, and that boxing kangaroo. That good photo by our longtime friend J.H. Peterson. Thank you for that. And before we leave the America's Cup, let's go back to where it all began. Julia, do you recognize this aerial photo? Do you recognize that island?
Maybe the Isle of Wight, but I don't know what that looks like.
It is. You are absolutely correct. That's the Isle of Wight. That's the Solent, the water between the mainland and the island. The English Channel there to the south. And that's where it all began in 1851, thanks to Ted Ryman, who took that photo.
Oh, good.
And sent it along. Ted Ryman, a Brit who lives in South Africa, of course, and is a real Fozy, a regular Fozy.
Right.
And is on here almost always, as he is, I believe, today.
Almost always.
taking us back to where it all started.
Right.
Okay, Julia, this day in history, we got to do that because this is our regular show. What happened on this day in history on the 3rd of September, 1838? And there is a sailing connection,
Sort
barely,
of.
sort of.
Oh, 1838.
Here's your first clue.
Yes.
See that name? We've seen that name already on the show, coincidentally, with Nick Douglas. But this is Frederick Douglass,
Oh, yeah.
the American abolitionist, thank you, who lived from 1818 to 1895, a former slave, and a leader of the abolitionist movement here in the American, particularly in the Northeast, most famous for his oratory and writing. He was an educated slave. You got to keep them down on the plantation, Julia. Don't give these people educations or educations, or
they might turn out to be
they
smart.
might turn out to be smart and cool and do something great for society.
Right.
Born into slavery in Maryland, which was a slave state, believe it or not, Douglass escaped because it was run by the Democrats. Escaped north in 1838 and became involved in the anti-slavery movement. In 1845, he published The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, a bestseller at the time and still considered among the most influential personal accounts of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what, Julia, is his connection to sailing? There it is. You can read that on the slide.
Disguised as a slavery, slavery.
Disguised as a sailor.
As a sailor.
Can you see it? It's a little. The print's not very strong.
Yeah, yeah.
The escape of Frederick Douglass on this day in history, 1838. He escaped from slavery disguised as a sailor, a Navy guy type sailor, but a sailor nonetheless. I mean, we got to celebrate this guy, right?
Right.
We got to claim everything we can claim for our beloved sport, including henceforth Frederick Douglass. This day in history, the 3rd of September, 1838. We're an hour and 17 minutes into this show after being on the air for, well, it wasn't so long this morning, Julie, because they went off the air after what? An hour and a half, was it? Or was it 2 hours? I can't remember. But
Dribbled on.
Dribbled on as they were running packages to fill the air, packages meaning video segments. Let's also get then to the last leg, and it's another cool video. And again, non-America's Cup, celebrating racing up in Wisconsin and Minnesota, what we call Scout Country. Scout Country extends to Michigan and Illinois and down into Texas. But here is a video from, remember we had Peter Harkin on the show here on one of these watch parties the other morning. He and his wife Edith, who's speaking of Hungarian, she is there as well. And they are from Pewaukee Lake there. As I see Andrew popping back up, there is Pewaukee Lake. I want to go here to the TV for a minute to camera 4, which is just almost due west of Milwaukee. And Milwaukee, of course, is on Lake Michigan, up the shore a bit from Chicago. And here is one of the coolest amateur videos that has been submitted to us here at Sailing Illustrated in a long time by one of our FOSI. Why don't we race A-Scouts in the America's Cup? What are these, 30? E-Scout is 38 feet long. How long is an A-Scout? 44? That's Valkyrie. One of the awesome A-Scouts up there in Wisconsin, Minnesota, on Pewaukee Lake.
Good luck.
And, you know, they don't mind racing in 20 plus. And those things do capsize. I flipped an E-Scout. I haven't flipped an A-Scout. Look at, even Andrew McIrvin is paying close attention. He said, we need to build a maxi scow. Andrew? Valkyrie. Our Fozy Todd Haynes sent that video in. That's his yacht, I believe. The black sails. That V doesn't stand for Valkyrie. The lakes up there each have a letter that indicates what lake the scows are off. It's a 100+ year tradition up there in Scow country. And that video from Todd Haynes is much appreciated. Look at that. They have a leeward gate. They invented the leeward gate up there. Yeah, Buddy Malgus. They did that for up in Scow country for obvious reasons. Okay, a nice video. Andrew McIrvin, have you ever been on an E-scow or on an A-scow, one of these things?
Just unmuting. No, I haven't. But it's interesting that the scow bow is taken over from the sort of little mini transat French boats, and now they're getting bigger and bigger, and the Imokas are going scow bow at 60 foot. So it's difficult to believe. I mean, I used to race international moths, and the Australian ones were all scows, and we had skiffs. So the scow concept's been around for a long time.
Indeed. In fact, we see one of the AC-75s arguably has a bit of a scow bow up front. And that, of course, is the boat Patriot of the New York Yacht Club's American Magic.
Yes.
But it's not in the water.
No. This is the new boat. Even has a bit of a the new boat has a bit of a scow bow as well. The new Patriot. It was funny. I
That's
asked
the first thing you said about it.
Well, I wondered why they. Well, when I saw it, I think I was among the first probably to say that looks like a scow.
You did.
This was their original Patriot from last time, but I'm wondering they took that same name. I guess they liked the name and used it, and that could be bad karma. I asked Claire Harrington the other day. She said, "No, we like the name. Everybody liked the boat. You know, we're rising from the ashes maybe of that campaign. So here we go, Phoenix, Patriot, whatever." Andrew, anything else you want to add to the show before we get to some of our funnies here at the end?
No, I don't think so. I think it's been, well, I'm just going to thank you for doing the watch parties and keeping us all interested in, because to be honest, the preliminary regatta was really, really boring. And it has got a little bit more exciting. There have been some quite good races with lead changes, but it looked like it was just going to be everybody comes in from that right-hand side, wins the start, end of story. And it has got a little bit better, but it's still...
Starkey.
You know, we're all still watching. It's exciting. Whatever you put the America's Cup in, it's going to be exciting because we've all been devoted. I must have got interested in the America's Cup when I was about 10. So we've been doing it all our lives. So I think we always will. Whatever they make the America's Cup sail in, we'll be interested.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I want to thank Andrew, who's joined us. Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin, the Secretary General of the International Maxi Association, the former Admiral of the Royal Ocean Racing Club, that esteemed ocean racing club based in St. James Place in London, where Andrew is not too far from the RORC, are you? It's your home.
No, about 3 miles.
And thanks to all of you who've joined us. We'll get to the D block here, Julia. You'd think poorly of me if I didn't come up with some funnies for this show today.
Yes.
And the gentleman.
With my friend.
With your friend, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. These are all pretty mild today because, frankly, I was too tired to try to do something more interesting. This came through. Just a nice one to start us off, ease us into these 3 or 4 of these WTFs that we've got at the end of the show. This, you can never be too young to go sailing. Or you could have said a boy and his dog and his boat. But that came through from Ed Worley down in SoCal. Nice, Ed. Thank you. It's a nice sentiment. It's why all of us are on here. We love our sport. We probably have since an early age. And some of us got involved later on, like Julia did.
At 26.
At 26. But, you know, that was still youngish. And it's nice to see that people can join at whatever age and carry on until they are 80 or 85 or 90. And this one, Julia.
Yes.
I'd like a burger. And the waitress says, "Is vegan okay?" And the guy says, "Is Monopoly money? Is play money okay?"
Yeah, that's
And
a good one.
do you like that one, Andrew? You muted. I'm talking like a lawyer. You muted yourself again there.
Yeah, but I like it.
Hey,
Yeah, I'm
you're
not,
a doctor. You're a surgeon.
You should eat vegetarians.
You should eat vegetarians, not eat vegetarian. Is that right?
Eat them.
Eat them. Now, aren't you? I mean, you're a cardiologist, right? You are seeing what should you be eating for heart health?
Actually, it's very interesting. Well, the whole red meat thing is slightly up in the air because it's rather like all these things, nutritional things. When they researched and said nobody should eat fat, it was all based on some incredibly dodgy research in countries after the war who were starving anyway. And the evidence to say that red meat's terribly bad for you is equally thin, actually. And there have been a lot of reanalyses. And it's everything in moderation. You don't eat nothing but steak, and you don't eat nothing but vegetables. We're omnivores. We're designed to eat a little bit of everything. We should carry on doing that. It's good for your biome. You should eat lots of different color vegetables as well as meat.
And a few blueberries and a few fruits.
Yeah, berries and nuts are particularly good for you.
I love nuts, peanuts, almonds, as Julia knows. I don't understand how they got the food pyramid. Nobody thought we'd be talking about this in Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, but how Andrew, they got the food pyramid upside down and said everybody should be eating carbs, and
that was extraordinary. Because I'm old enough to remember being told you shouldn't eat stodge and you shouldn't eat bread and potatoes and things. And the whole thing flipped and it was nonsense. And, it's extraordinary.
Well, and don't eat fat. And it turns out that the stuff they were stuffing down all of us, especially kids, as we were growing up, is sugar. And
sugar's the poison. Sugar's the worst.
Exactly. Okay, well, I see that Mark Michelson is on here on the Zoom. I don't know if Mark wants to come on or not and give us any late-breaking weather advice. Mark, if you do, let me know. He's standing by on the Zoom, but Mark's also had he's had a bout, Andrew, with his ticker, with his heart, and he's come good. And one of the things he's doing is not drinking alcohol and not eating sugar. Anything else that all of us who are
unfortunately, alcohol is sugar, really, as well.
Exactly.
Everything in moderation.
That's a bit dangerous.
Well, in moderation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
unfortunately, the evidence for red wine being good for you is equally thin.
Well, that's why, as you know, here before I stopped drinking completely, we were drinking here at the Beach Street Yacht Club tequila soda.
Yep.
Because that's supposedly the lowest glycemic drink, alcohol, tequila. So I don't know if that's good. Graham Sweeney is saying
alcohol is alcohol. Unfortunately, it's sort of all whichever way you look at it.
It all gets turned into what?
There may be some polyphenols and things in red wine that are better for you than spirits, but it's pretty rough evidence.
Graham Sweeney is saying we've got to have a new segment now called Chewing the Fat with Dr. McGurk.
I think we'll be doing that on Tinsley Island.
Yeah, as Fog Machine says, with diet advice.
I'm a bit worried about going to an island with 400 white Republicans. But,
well, this is San Francisco. It's a fairly mixed group, so we're rather more.
I'm teasing.
We're rather more diverse here, as you know. Andrew, thank you very much for coming on from London. And there's a lot. Go back, as Julia likes to remind us. Go read the comments because there's a lot of fantastic comments, particularly here in the last 10, 15 minutes that we haven't been able to get to. Clayton Embley is particularly saying, and maybe we'll raise a small glass to Clayton Embley. He's saying there are good alcohols like Kentucky bourbon. He is a purveyor and has sent us a couple bottles here to the Beach Street Yacht Club. Thanks very much, Andrew, for coming on. We much appreciate it.
Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you. See you soon.
We do look forward to seeing you in just a couple of weeks. I got one more of these, Julia. Let's carry on here. That came from Ted Ryman, by the way. The next one is from Claire. You can imagine who this came from. The 4 musicians of the apocalypse. on this morning on the Andrew just left us, but this morning on the watch party,
Yeah.
Andrew said, "Where's your banjo? Why don't you have a guitar or a banjo here in Studio B, and we could, when things get slow over there in Barcelona, we can sing 'You Are My Sunshine,' something Croutonic." The 4 musicians of the apocalypse, according to Claire Harrington, Vice Commodore Claire Harrington, who sent that along. Gordon Smith likes that one. The banjo, the bagpipes, Graham Sweeney, the accordion, and I guess the bongo. Bingo, 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 bongo. Graham Sweeney is referring to this current America's Cup as the Whack-A-Mole America's Cup because those guys keep going up and down, Julia, in their the heads above the parapet in those boats. We'll see how New York Yacht Club, what they're sailing with on Friday, because it looks, or tomorrow rather, on Wednesday, because it looks like that the rules people may be moving against their covers, their honeycomb covers. We shall see. That's from Graham Sweeney. He's named it the Whack-A-Mole. I found the graphic. Graham gave it. He gets the credit for coming up with the idea. We are well and truly finally to the finish line after an hour and a half. Graham Sweeney is saying, if you wear a red jacket to do the stag do, you'll terrify the Americans so much they'll be digging up George Washington.
No, great.
Okay, enough of that. Any other comments? Julia, remind everybody to go back and look at the comments.
Yes, please do. You'll be instructed and pleased.
You will be indeed. That is the finish line. And we always like to say, Julia,
like, follow, and especially share.
Indeed. Do that. Do the clicks right now while you're online on YouTube or Facebook. Comments are welcome, even in replay. For those of you who watch it in replay, we are getting hundreds of views of these watch parties in the morning. Live, I mean, right when we come off the air, and I have other statistics. Clark Chapin has other statistics, but we appreciate very much your support. We're doing it because it's fun for all of us. I mean, it's fun for us as well, right?
Right.
Right, Julia?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Julia, to you for your continuing support. Thanks to everybody who supports us via Patreon. If you aren't already, please become a patron. Give us a few bucks a month. Patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated to keep our studio, to keep us on the air. And without the support of all of you who do that, we wouldn't have the money to keep all of our streaming up to speed. Likewise, those who have let us use audio, video, and images for today's show, we really appreciate you all as well. Julia, final thoughts?
I was reading the See You at 5 a.m.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do tomorrow. I hope you can join us for that. Julia, you're going to be watching upstairs from the Commodore's suite. I know you're eating your heart out. Would love to be down here.
I'd much rather be here.
But that would be a logistically challenging thing to do that. So I will be back here unless, here's the caveat. If tomorrow sometime I hear from Claire Harrington or one of the others of you, we have several FOSI in Barcelona feeding us information rather constantly. If I hear they've called racing off because of thunderstorms or otherwise, and I may hear that at midnight tonight, our time, 0900 Wednesday morning, Barcelona time. If and when I hear that they've called it off, I'll put a notification up on our Facebook page and cancel the 5 a.m. watch party, and I'll turn over and go back to bed. I'll go back to sleep, Julia.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Otherwise, we will see you tomorrow at 5 o'clock. If you can, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. And we'll see you maybe tomorrow. If not, probably Thursday. Ciao for now.